Okay, get ready because today we're going deep, really deep into the mind of Leonard Hofstadter.
Leonard Hofstadter from The Big Bang Theory.
You got it. From the Big Bang Theory. I bet you think you know him, right? The classic type 5, he's brainy, he's a bit awkward,
Loves his science.
loves the science.
Mhm.
But what if I told you there's this whole theory about him actually being a type 6?
Ooh,
Yeah. Specifically, the self-preservation subtype.
the warmth subtype.
Yeah. So buckle up because we're going to unpack all this. His insecurities, his relationship with Sheldon,
Oh, the authority issue.
big-time authority issues, his fear of abandonment,
Yeah.
and we're going to talk about why he's definitely not a type 5.
Even though on the surface, he really seems like he could be.
He does. He does. So walk us through this. Why are we throwing out the type 5 label for Leonard?
Right. So like you said, he loves science. He's intellectual. He could seem like a 5. But for a 5, their pursuit of knowledge is really all about sort of withdrawing from the world, creating that sense of self-sufficiency.
Right, like they're in their own little world.
Exactly. They want to be independent. And a lot of times they do isolate themselves to learn and to understand. But Leonard, he's all about connecting with people.
Yeah, he really is.
He wants to share his passions. He's always trying to explain things to Penny, engage with the guys. So it's not about retreating for him. It's about belonging.
That's interesting. So you're saying his love of science, it's actually a way for him to connect with people,
Yeah, I think so.
not isolate himself.
Exactly.
That's really interesting. Okay, so we know type 6s are all about security.
Mm-hmm.
Where do we see that in Leonard?
Well, it's all over his personality.
Yeah.
You see it in his relationships, especially with Sheldon. Think about how much Leonard wants validation from Sheldon. Do you remember that episode where he was dying to get into that elite physics club?
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
He was practically begging Sheldon for approval, and that's not just about wanting to be in the group. That's about wanting to feel secure and worthy, and that's like a classic type 6 behavior.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
He wants approval, not just from Sheldon, though, from Penny, too.
Yeah.
Like, he needs that affirmation from the people around him. It makes him feel okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole warmth thing, the warmth subtype,
Yeah.
doesn't that add another layer to this?
It does. So the self-preservation 6s, they need stability and harmony. They really need it. And they're the peacemakers. They avoid conflict at all costs. That's how they feel safe in their environment.
And, I mean, living with Sheldon, that's like the opposite of a peaceful environment.
Talk about a change.
It's such a challenge.
But you see Leonard, like, bending over backwards to make Sheldon happy.
Yeah, to try to keep things calm.
All the time. He's constantly trying to smooth things over, keep the peace, because, any little disruption, that just throws his sense of security right out the window.
So it's a self-preservation tactic.
It really is.
So is all that niceness from Leonard.
Oh, yeah.
Just a way to manage Sheldon. To keep his own world feeling stable.
I think you're picking up what I'm putting down.
I love this. This is really changing how I think about their relationship. It's not just a quirky roommate thing. It's Leonard trying to survive.
Yeah.
Emotionally survive. But there's this tension, right, between him wanting everything to be harmonious and Sheldon's just controlling everything.
All the time.
How does that fit into the type 6 picture?
So here's the thing. Type 6s have this really complicated relationship with authority. They don't trust it, but they also really want guidance.
It's push and pull.
It is. And you see that in Leonard. He complains about Sheldon's rules all the time, but then he gives in and follows them.
So he's not just avoiding conflict.
Right.
He actually wants that structure from Sheldon.
He does. It's about feeling secure. By giving in, even when it doesn't make sense, Leonard creates order in his life.
Less risk, less anxiety.
It reinforces that safety for him.
This is so interesting. I feel like we just scratched the surface here.
Oh, there's so much more to uncover.
There is.
Yeah. Next, we should talk about how Leonard's fear of abandonment, which is a huge thing for type 6.
Yeah.
It affects his relationship with Penny and how he interacts with the whole group.
Okay, we have to get into that. This is good stuff.
Okay, so we were talking about Leonard's need for security. Let's think about his relationship with Penny.
Okay.
Type 6s, especially self-preservation 6s like we think Leonard is,
Yeah.
they really struggle with this fear of abandonment. And it's not just romantic relationships. It's like in all their relationships.
Yeah, it's like they need to feel like they belong, like they're part of a solid group. They need that security.
Right. And we see that so clearly with Leonard and Penny. Like, remember all those times he tried to win her back after they broke up?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
I was always analyzing every little thing she did, every text message.
Yeah, like was she still into him?
Exactly. He needed that reassurance.
And let's be real, Penny. She wasn't exactly the most emotionally stable partner. I mean, that probably just made his anxiety worse.
Oh, absolutely. For someone like Leonard who needs things to be predictable, who needs to feel safe and secure, dating Penny, that had to be a roller coaster for him.
Emotionally, a total roller coaster.
Yeah. But that's the thing, isn't it? He's drawn to her free spirit, even though it makes him uneasy.
It's like he wants stability.
Yeah.
But he also kind of wants that excitement, a little bit of chaos.
A little bit.
And this fear of abandonment. It's not just with Penny, right? It's with his friends, too.
Exactly. Think about it. Leonard, he's the one who holds the group together. He's always the mediator. You know, he plans all the events. He's always putting everyone else's needs before his own.
He's such a good guy.
He is. But it's not just about being nice. It's strategic. You know, it's how he makes sure he stays part of the group.
So he doesn't get left behind.
Exactly. He's creating his own sense of belonging, his own safety net.
So he can feel secure.
Exactly. And this is a really important part of the self-preservation 6. That warmth, that generosity, that willingness to do anything for others. It's not just about being selfless. It's how they survive. It's how they make sure they have a place in the group.
This is really making me think about Leonard in a whole new way. But let's go back to this idea that he's a type 5. We've talked about how he uses science to connect with people.
Right.
Not to isolate himself. But is there anything else that makes us think he's not a 5?
Yeah, I think the key here is to remember that 5s, they learn things so they can be self-sufficient. They want to understand everything so they don't have to rely on anyone else.
Right, right.
But Leonard, he wants guidance. He wants reassurance. He's always looking for validation, especially from Sheldon. And he doubts himself a lot. That's not very type 5.
So it's not just about what he's interested in, it's why he's interested in it.
Exactly. For Leonard, knowledge isn't about creating this like fortress of intellect. It's about finding where he fits in the world, connecting with people who get him, feeling secure through those connections.
And that's so different from a type 5 who just wants to be on their own. Okay, so we pretty much debunked this whole type 5 thing.
I think so.
But before we move on, there's something else I'm curious about. We've been talking about Leonard's need for security, his fear of abandonment, all of that. But how does all of this come together to create this picture of a self-preservation 6? What should people listening to this, people who, are really into the Enneagram, what should they take away from all of this?
That's a really good question. And it makes me think about something that's really important to remember about the self-preservation 6. All that anxiety, that fear, that constant need for reassurance. It's not about being weak. It's about being really aware of how vulnerable you are.
What do you mean?
I mean, self-preservation 6s, they're always looking for danger, even if it's not really there. They're always scanning their environment, looking for anything that could threaten their security.
So it's like they're always on high alert.
Yeah. And that's why they're anxious, why they overthink things, why they need so much reassurance.
It's not just about being afraid, it's about knowing that things can go wrong.
Exactly. And that's what drives them to need control, to want those strong connections that can protect them.
Wow. That's a really interesting way to think about it. It really makes you see Leonard in a whole new light.
I think so too. And it's what makes him such a relatable character, even for people who aren't type 6s. We all have those fears, those insecurities. We all want to feel connected. Leonard, he shows us that it's okay to admit those things, to ask for help, to build those relationships that make us feel safe and loved.
I love that. It's like by understanding Leonard as a self-preservation 6, we can see past all his little quirks.
Yeah.
And see this really human need for connection, for safety.
It reminds us that even when people seem needy or neurotic, it's often just a way of coping, a way of dealing with a world that can feel really scary and unpredictable.
This has been amazing. We've learned so much about Leonard already.
I know, right?
But we're not done yet. There's one big question we still need to talk about. Why do people so often miss this Enneagram typing?
Yeah, that's a good point. We need to talk about that. And I think it's because we tend to think that smart people who are really into intellectual things, we think they're not emotional.
Right. Right, that they're not as in touch with their feelings.
Yeah. So we see someone like Leonard. He's a scientist. He can be a little awkward.
Yeah.
And we just assume he's that classic introverted, independent type
We're
5.
letting stereotypes get in the way.
Yeah, exactly. We don't see that warmth, that generosity, that deep need for connection. And that's a big lesson for anyone who loves the Enneagram. Don't let those preconceived notions tell you what someone's type is.
Right, right.
Look deeper, figure out what motivates them. Remember that everyone is complicated. Everyone has their own story.
Such a good point. We've covered so much today.
We have.
But I want to leave everyone listening with something to think about.
Yeah.
How does Leonard's journey, the way he grows throughout the show, how does that show us what a self-preservation 6 can do? What can we learn from his struggles, from the times when things went right for him? And how can that help us figure out our own paths to grow as people?
I love that question. And I think it's something we should all be thinking about as we learn more about the Enneagram.
Yeah.
Because the real power of the system, it's not just about knowing our types, it's about using that knowledge to be more compassionate, more understanding, and to really appreciate how incredible and complex people are.
It's a really good point. It's not just about, putting people in boxes.
No, not at all.
It's about trying to understand why they do the things they do.
What motivates them? What are they afraid of? What do they want?
And when we get that, when we really see that in people,
Yeah.
that's when we can start to be more understanding, more compassionate.
Absolutely. We start to see them as individuals, not just types.
And Leonard, his journey as a self-preservation 6, it really shows us all of that.
It does.
We've talked about how he needs to feel safe, how he's afraid of being alone, how much he wants to connect with people. And all of that, it affects his relationships, the work he does.
His whole life, really.
Yeah, his whole life. But what's amazing is even with all of that anxiety, all that need for reassurance, he grows.
He does.
He changes. He becomes, a better version of himself.
A more confident version.
Yeah.
Throughout the show.
He takes risks. He steps outside of his comfort zone.
Sometimes he even stands up to Sheldon.
Yeah, a little bit. And that shows us, even though self-preservation 6s are afraid of things,
Yeah.
they can still be brave.
Oh, absolutely. They can be incredibly courageous, especially when they know they have people they can count on.
It's like they need that strong base of connections.
Yeah.
To give them that push to, go after what they want.
That support system.
Yeah. And that's something we can all learn from, right? No matter what our type is.
I think so.
We all need those people, those relationships that feel like we belong.
Those safe spaces.
Yeah. Because when we feel secure, when we know we're not alone,
Yeah.
that's when we can really take chances, try new things, really become who we're meant to be.
That's the power of connection.
And that's the power of knowing about the Enneagram, right?
I think so.
It helps us understand ourselves, understand the people around us.
It helps us build better relationships, be more empathetic.
Create a life that's, more fulfilling.
More meaningful.
Yeah. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Leonard Hofstadter, I want to leave everyone with this. Next time you meet someone, and maybe they seem a little anxious or insecure, or maybe they're always trying to please everyone,
Yeah.
try to see them as a self-preservation 6.
Remember that warmth, that loyalty, that huge capacity for love they have.
And maybe, instead of judging them or thinking they're weak, you can offer them some understanding, some support.
Because we all just want to find our place in the world. We all want to feel safe and loved.
That's it, right. And maybe a little understanding can help us all get there.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
It's been so great talking about Leonard with you.
I loved it.
And I hope everyone listening has enjoyed this deep dive into his personality.
Me too. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep into the amazing world of human nature.